Good morning, and I'd like to thank all of you for coming this morning to our investor breakfast, and I'd certainly, on behalf of St. Patrick Hospital, like to welcome the partnership investors, our strategic partners, our elected officials, and our guests for the Missoula Economic Partnership meeting. I have some introductions I want to make this morning, and I'm not seeing everybody here yet. So I'd like for you to stand when I introduce. We do have some esteemed guests from Helena this morning that have joined us. And so I'd like to certainly ask them to stand, and we'd give them a warm welcome. First, Meg O'Leary with the Department of Montana Department of Commerce. Mike Tooley, the Director of Montana Department of Transportation. And Jerry Duran, the Tourism Division Administrator of the Department of Commerce. Thanks for coming. And thanks for all that you do to help contribute to the economic growth of Montana. You'll be hearing shortly from Delta Airlines Senior Vice President Eric Phillips. We would also like to welcome Jeff Davidman from Delta's corporate office, and thank you for flying in for our breakfast. We'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our long-term investors for your continued support of the partnership. And we'd also like to welcome some new investors that have joined our organization since last October. So if you are here, please stand so we can recognize you accordingly. Steve Nelson and Mike Bain from Bonner Property Development. Kirby Christian with Christian, Sampson, and Jones. Ben Hirsch and Ben Corey with Crowley Fleck. Jason Nordberg and Carl Tyler with Carl Tyler Chevrolet. And Ron Hooper with Neptune Aviation Services. There are also some new faces in the audience today as we took the liberty to invite some business owners who are considering investing in the partnership to learn more about what we do in the Missoula Economic Partnership. And we'd like to have the opportunity at the next meeting to be able to announce you as our new investors as well. Economic development really is a team effort, and part of those teams are our strategic partner. And I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize one of our new strategic partners, Associated Employers. Connie Kuhlbeck at Associated Employers has been giving local entrepreneurs HR advice as part of our innovation initiative session, during our innovation initiative session since the program was launched. Thank you, Connie, and we welcome you to the partnership. One more bit of housekeeping before I pass the mic over to Brigitta. You'll notice some note cards in front of you. After the actual presentation session of the breakfast this morning, what we're going to do, if you'll just write your questions down, we're going to gather those note cards, and we'll have a brief question and answer session for any of the presenters this morning. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce Brigitta Miranda-Freer, the Director of Business Development for the partnership. Brigitta.
So when I was driving over here at dark 30 this morning, I thought to myself, you know, the super me would have had ample time to review all these comments and give a really polished presentation. And then I thought, well, except that the actual me cannot manipulate the time-space continuum. And so I might have had a little less time than I would have liked to go through these, so bear with me, because we've got a lot of good information to share with you today. So as you know, or hopefully are beginning to know, a lion's share of what we do as an economic development organization is our work with local companies, helping them to grow and expand. Since we last met, partnership staff facilitated 271 meetings in support of 129 businesses. You remember our last meeting just happened at the end of October. So that's a staggering amount of free expertise that has been provided to businesses and entrepreneurs in our community. In the last 3 months alone, we worked particularly closely with 13 companies locally in professional services, technology, manufacturing, and distribution to help them identify their needs and meet them faster. Combined potential job creation from that work is 158 jobs. So numbers aside, I think it's important to point out that I see a couple faces in the crowd here, people that have decided to become investors in the partnership after having a business expansion and retention visit. That's not only personally gratifying for me, I think it's very important to the long-term sustainability of this organization, so I want to thank you. Every time we work with a local company, and that message happens to be pushed out via the media or our network of investors and strategic partners, something great happens. I get a lot more work. I get a flurry of phone calls from people who say, essentially, hey, can you do that for me? And so for that reason, we just want to take a few minutes to highlight 3 of the businesses that we've touched in the last 6 months. 2 of these success stories you have heard us mention before, but they're such specific illustrations of how we can layer support for individual businesses to help impact their bottom line significantly and to help them add jobs. We called on Partners Creative to help us tell that story. So as you watch these short opportunity-made videos, please, I encourage you just to think about a company that you may know that may benefit from a visit from us, and perhaps it's your company if we haven't already touched you. All right.
Hunting market, we've made a chip that you can plug into your Garmin GPS unit that actually loads a topo map with public and private land ownership information. So when a hunter's in the field, they can determine their position relative to public and private property boundaries, and they can figure out who owns what pieces of property. You know, we were trying to grow rapidly, and that rapid growth in itself is a big challenge, and that's where Missoula Economic Partnership actually came in to really help us out and make us realize here's some tools that you can use to help you grow faster. Speed to market was very important, and the Big Sky Trust Fund and the equipment we were able to get from that really made that possible. We knew eventually we'd get these computers, but we didn't have the funding, or we didn't want to spend that money right away. With this funding, we were able to take the leap and get the right computers, right equipment right away, which actually accelerated our growth, which actually helped create better products from the get-go. MEP does, and what they did with us is they really kind of take this whole world of all these programs that are out there and say, these ones will actually work for you. And we evaluated whether we could use them or not, but James and Brigitta helped us narrow down, these probably apply to you. And we were able to research and figured out, yeah, we could apply for those. So that was really helpful.
Today we are one of the most sophisticated contract manufacturers in the dietary supplement industry, and we find increasing demand for those services. The vitamins, minerals, botanicals, functional formulas make up the bulk of what we do. Half of our products are made in tablets, the other half into capsules, and then we bottle the products here as well. Initially, we came to Missoula because we wanted to be here. As it turned out, Missoula really does have an advantage over many parts of the country. When it comes to more sophisticated, more difficult manufacturing, Missoula, I think, could compete with anywhere in the country. We sell product all over the world. Our products are shipped into Southeast Asia, into Europe, and so we're competing with manufacturers all over the world. And we feel that we are competing very effectively. The quality of the workforce here is so important. Missoula is head and shoulders above anything else that I've worked with.
Thank you. So incidentally, our work with onXmaps, or hunting GPS maps, and Nutritional Labs will help create 95 new jobs over the next couple of years and has already provided capital investment into our community. So I haven't seen Eric this morning, but I do see Terry Benishek back there, as well as Steve Dibdahl with his organization, and I just want to thank you for letting us share your story. We'd also like to feature another company today, Advanced Technology Group. This is an IT company with a national footprint that happens to be located in downtown Missoula. ATG has been expanding rapidly, and we connected with them back in the fall to talk about resources available to them as they grew their team of 26 at that point in time, and we're launching a sister company. In this case, we identify them as an ideal recipient of on-the-job training dollars, excuse me, and connect them with Missoula Job Service. In a short period of time and a pretty painless application process later, they received $28,000 in on-the-job training grants in support of 2 specific jobs, and Jen, I think you've hired 19 recently. So Jen, if you would mind standing up there, Jen Baldassin is ATG's Operations Director. Congratulations to you and your team on your growing success, Jen. One of the reasons I wanted to highlight this story, well, 2 reasons I wanted to highlight it. Number 1, they did exactly what we want every company to do. They picked up the phone and called us when they were looking at adding jobs or maybe had a training need. So that was number 1. And number 2, this company was actually an exception to the rule that you've heard me say before, that most businesses have no idea about the economic development program support that's out there for them. In this case, ATG had a much higher level of sophistication. They had already engaged in a couple different programs. And Jen, I think, I could be wrong, but I think when we met, you were pretty sure there wasn't much we'd be able to do for you. So luckily, that turned out not to be the case. And by the way, thank you for the nice card and the chocolates when that worked out. So as many of you may know, we work very closely with Marcy Allen and Kelly Yarns, I see back there as well, with the Bitterroot Economic Development District, to serve local companies that are good candidates for certain economic development programs, including Big Sky Trust Fund grants. In this quarter, 3 companies secured a total of $157,500 in Big Sky Trust Fund grants. These projects, these dollars support at Neptune Aviation Services, Consumer Direct, and Submittable could result in hundreds of jobs in the next 3 years and significant capital investment into our community. Thanks to the team at BREDD for all the great work you do. Because of the investments of the generous businesses in this room, we are able to provide these services to businesses free of charge. Thank you so very much. And once again, if you're sitting here thinking, you know, I know a business that could use this assistance, or why can't I get some of this funding to help my business grow? You know, it may very well be the case that you can. So please just pick up the phone, give us a call, or email me, and we'll sit down, look at your long-range plans, and see if we can help you get there a little bit faster. So now I'd like to turn to the partnership's business recruitment work. In this quarter, we engaged with 11 different companies looking to expand or relocate into our market. Potential job growth represented by these inquiries is 487 jobs. We work very hard on selling Missoula to companies as well as site selectors that are considering our city. And while the average life cycle of a company looking to make a decision to relocate is 18 months, we are cautiously optimistic that by the time we meet again, we will have 1 new manufacturing company and potentially 4 new technology firms that we can introduce to you. So just to bring this all full circle, I'd like to close with underscoring the very direct link between our business expansion efforts and our business attraction efforts. If you've been following our in-business columns in the Missoulian, you've heard us talk about the fast-growing IT business ecosystem in Missoula. Exciting companies like Submittable, ATG, Pterodact, GCS, Mamalode, just to name a few, are growing, and they're adding jobs here. Their success is vital to the process of attracting more technology companies into Missoula. So my comments were meant to provide you with a brief summary today. Please call me if you would like more detail. And again, if you think that you may be able to benefit from some of these programs or know someone that might, have them give me a call. Thanks. So now you'll hear from James Grunke, and I'm pretty sure he actually can manipulate the time-space continuum, so this will be very polished.
Thanks, Brigitta. Good morning, all. It's really quite gratifying to look out and see such a large crowd of people coming to learn about what's happening in economic development the first thing in the morning. It's good for us that we're actually running out of venues that are big enough for us to have these breakfasts. And so that just, we want to thank all of you for your commitment to what we're trying to accomplish here. In addition to all the good work that Brigitta does for us, I'd also like to recognize the rest of the staff. Of course, we have Melanie Brock, who's right up here in the front, who's our Melanie's our Director of Strategic Initiatives, which means really whatever's kind of interesting enough for us to be involved in. And she also does all of the materials. So she's done the PowerPoint, the handouts that you have in front of you are all generated by Melanie. And we have Desiree Stanley back at the door. Hi, Desiree. And she has the untenable task of managing the three of us. And then next to her is Zeke, our MBA intern, and he's been a great addition for us, and he manages our innovation initiative on our behalf. So Zeke, thanks for being here. So when I normally speak, I like to usually just kind of talk off the cuff and have a couple little notes that I've jotted down, and these are the things I'm going to talk about. But as Melanie was kind of working through our talking points, she kept trying to tell me, you know, you're really better if you're not rushed. And I think that was her way of saying, read the talking points. So I'll try to do that. In addition to, you know, we love talking about the successes of helping companies leverage resources to help them grow and expand, but we're involved in many other things. And one of the things that I want to start about is what I've been calling this year is kind of the year of the startup. And that's not really true. I mean, we've always had good startups in Missoula, but what really it is finally that we're at the critical mass and we're recognizing the role and value of startups in our community. So last summer, we received national recognition by the Atlantic Monthly Group as a high-tech challenger to Silicon Valley, based on venture capital per capita. And you can see that's surprising to see how big the dot is for Missoula. And that just shows about the interest and the startup level that we have in this community. This also spurred calls from other venture funds across the country to our office saying, what's going on up there? Do we need to know, do we need to be up there seeing what's going on? And these things really do matter to us and to be able to attract business. You know, we call it business recruitment. Really, I think it's business attraction. And national recognition is things that make a difference for our community. So from Quant Post to Acuity Design, startups are thriving here, and we're excited to have them to join with some of our strategic partners to grow them and grow the ecosystem. One of the things that's really going to change the growth of the ecosystem is the just opening of the Blackstone Launchpad at the University of Montana. This is also, they have an office at another university in this state, somewhere east of here, but the main one, of course, is at the University of Montana. It's going to be led by Paul Gladen, and he's going to be working with students who have any business idea to look at entrepreneurship as a career. And the entire strategy about this is that business ideas are just not happening at the business school, but they're interdisciplinary. And how do the people in the pharmacy school or the physics department or the computer science department learn about business opportunities? And we think this is really exciting. The state of Montana has joined one of 5 states total to have this program. It's a really a great validation of the university system that we have here. Down the road, it'll eventually, the Launchpad will be open to University of Montana alumni. But right now, it's going to be open to students. But they'll also be tapping the alumni for mentoring opportunities for these students. The University of Montana's Montech Incubator, or we like to call it an accelerator, is full. We have great, interesting companies that are there. In fact, we're on the board now looking at, is there other places in the community that we would expand Montech, expand the footprint? So it's been a great asset for us. Blackfoot Telecommunications, we've talked about it in the past. They upgraded Montech's service to 1 gigabyte per second internet service. The only facility in the state of Montana that this service is available to for free for the tenants. And this makes a game-changing difference for these startup businesses as they can now concentrate on their business versus having their scarce resources go to technology needs. Family Enterprise Montana is another initiative that we've taken. I love this note actually here. It says, don't read through the stats. Thanks, Melanie. They're good. Which luckily, I don't like ever reading PowerPoints because you can read them yourselves, but I appreciate the attention to detail. We just had a meeting yesterday. This is a partnership between the University of Montana and ourselves, Anderson-Zermulin, First Interstate Bank, to look at how are we addressing the needs for family-based businesses to grow, expand, and what their succession plans are. I had a meeting yesterday with Dean Gianchetta. The University of Montana wants to continue this program. We'll begin looking at a certificate process that we would probably use Dean Roger McLean from the School of Extended Lifelong Learning to offer this a course for family-based business and closely held businesses. And so we're very excited about that, and I think if you'd read my last article in the Missoulian just last week was about this particular topic. The last thing I'd like to talk a little bit about is our Air Service Task Force. I always say when I'm speaking to any group, it doesn't matter really what the topic is I'm talking about, I'm always asked what's going on with Air Service and what's happening at the MERC. And in fact, our own intern asked me this question when I was speaking to an MBA class on alternative financing mechanisms. And I don't know how Air Service got in there, but it always comes up. And my standard answer is, we're working on it, and I don't know. Luckily, I think we get to say some other things now. Reducing airfares is a key to our economic strategy because we need affordable air service. We formed the Missoula Air Service Task Force for 3 priorities. Our first goal was to improve in-state air service. You saw one of the grants that was up there listed from BREDD for the Big Sky Trust Fund. One of those things is doing a marketing and feasibility assessment about establishing in-state service that would be from Missoula to Billings to Williston. We know that there's demand, and this is something that we're taking very seriously and working very hard on. We are hopeful that the feasibility assessment proves the market will be successful, and we'll continue to work with that. Our second goal was always to increase a low-cost air carrier service. You know, it's business 101 that a more healthy competition for goods or services, the wider range of prices. Monday, we were happy to be part of an announcement that after 2 years of courting Frontier Airlines, they've committed nonstop round-trip service from Missoula to Denver starting in June. This brings the number of quality air service providers at the Missoula airport to 5 airline companies and increases the availability of more flight options and lower fares. We also know in this coming season, in the month of July, we're projected to have over 50,000 seats in the month of July into our market. This is, Chris, is that the largest we've ever had? And a lot of this work is done. While we are taking some of the credit, we can't do it without the many people who are our partners. And Chris Jensen, the airport director, and Brian Elstead, the deputy director, we could not have a better, I can't imagine a better relationship or better people to work with. So thank you both for what you've done. Our third goal has always been about increasing direct flights and overall capacity. I mean, we're seeing capacity growth, but we've also tried to think about what markets make sense for us as a community. What other communities should we have a direct flight to? What are the business opportunities? We know the number one ability for us to attract a company here is the ability to have a direct flight. We have 12 communities now that we have a direct flight to, but we're looking always for new markets. Delta has always been a great partner in our work to develop more ways. Over the holiday season, I think unprompted, just really kind of on their own, maybe it was who we're going to hear from, Eric, they had nonstop service to Los Angeles, daily nonstop service. It exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations. In fact, I believe we're going to have some nonstop service coming this summer. Last summer, they introduced nonstop once-a-week flight to Atlanta. That service performed so well that this summer we're going to see twice-a-week service. So we're always looking at new markets, and it takes great partnerships with our legacy airlines plus all the other ones there. The more direct flights we have from Missoula to major cities around the country means the more markets that are open for business. Delta gets this, and Delta has shown a great dedication to making continuous improvements to serving our community, and we are grateful for the long-standing relationship that we have for them. We invited Eric Phillips, Delta Airlines Senior Vice President of Pricing and Revenue Management, that's even longer than Director of Strategic Initiatives, to visit with you about Delta's vision about serving the Missoula International Airport. Eric is a native of Lewistown, Montana, and a graduate of Carroll College in Helena. He oversees a wide range of Delta operations, including pricing and inventory, for all of the company's 170 destinations in the US, Canada, Latin America, and the Caribbean. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and say welcome, Eric.
Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation actually to be here. You know, one of my favorite topics is talking about air service in Montana, and it's something that I've worked on for a long time. So just, you know, you heard the background. I grew up in Lewistown, went to school at Carroll. My wife is from Helena. We met while we were at Carroll. And I've been with Delta for about 16 years now, coming on 16 years. I've been in the role that I've been in just for, you know, a few months. I've been in domestic, you know, kind of the operation of domestic within Delta since 2005. And so just to give you a little bit of history of how all of this has evolved, because when you talk about air service and you talk about air service into communities like Missoula and the other cities that we serve here, it's about evolution. And so if you go back to before 2005, there was no air service into the state of Montana from east of the Mississippi. So Meg O'Leary, who's here this morning, she's in a different role. We've known each other for a long time. Meg was at Big Sky. And I was in a role, I was general manager of the Atlanta hub in network planning. So within an airline, network planning is all about the where you fly, what you fly, when you fly it. So I had responsibility for the Atlanta kind of schedule, if you will. One of my main goals in that job was to get a nonstop flight from Atlanta to Montana. So in working then with Meg when she was at Big Sky, we were able to then to get a nonstop flight from Atlanta to Bozeman for the winter of 2005. That was the start. That's how then it all evolved from there, because a big part of it is that a lot of people at Delta and a lot of people in Atlanta don't know about you. So getting them to know about what is possible in Montana was how we got it started. And then from there, then the evolution has just continued year after year, season after season. And we see the benefits of what we've done with then service that we've added. LA to Missoula, that's just kind of different, but there was real opportunity there. So trying it made a lot of sense for us. It's going to come back in the summer. And then like you heard, Atlanta, Missoula coming back this summer as well, and even going to 2 times a week. So it's all part of an evolution of starting with service and then growing it from there. I think one of the really great opportunities that you all have in Missoula is this combination, and not a lot of communities have it, but this real great combination between leisure and business. And that's what provides then the opportunity that we see in the service that we add, be it from, you know, the daily service that you know from Salt Lake, from Minneapolis, from Denver, from Seattle, but then also trying new and different things. So increasing these gateways, these access points into the cities in, you know, here in Missoula, but, you know, the other cities as well in Montana is important, because that's what business travelers really care about. You know, you can talk about fares, and I mean, look, I know I'm an unpopular guy when it comes to that topic. That's cool. My job before I got to Delta was bank auditor. I think that was actually even maybe worse. But it really is about increasing those access points, you know, both for the domestic traveler as well as international. And that's what we see then when we add service from LA, is then an access point that provides unique destinations that you do not get from Minneapolis or from Salt Lake or from Denver. Regardless of who you talk about is in the competitive set, Frontier, United, Alaska, whoever it might be, we know we have to earn your business every day. We don't take any of it for granted. And the way that we earn that then is with quality service, a reliable operation that you can count on, that passengers who want to come here can count on. And then also like I said, being sustainable in the market. That's how we earn it. And we are committed, not just, having the schedule in place, but we recognize that being a partner with the community is an important part of who we are. So thank you again for the invitation. Thanks for, to be in this room, and to see the slides that you've shown, it's outstanding. We in Montana always knew that it was there, so being able to communicate that to others is really, really important. And I'm so excited. I'm really thrilled about what you all have done here as a community, and the service that has been added to Missoula is a direct result, I know, of a ton of effort on all of your parts. So congratulations. It really is a great story, and we're happy to be a part of it. So thank you. Do you want me to stay?
Thank you. I think, real quick, so I'm not sure if I'm on. Yeah, I am on. Before we open it up for question and answers, Meg, if you said you wanted to make a few remarks, we'd certainly love to hear from you. And while she's coming up, if you'll start passing your note cards and your questions towards the aisles, and staff will pick those up so that we can facilitate a brief question and answer session. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for a couple minutes of your time. And I can't tell you how privileged I am to be standing here next to my teammate who hails from Lewistown, and I think many of you know I come from Helena. And the fact that the two of us get to be here in front of you and say it really all started because of the efforts that two native Montana kids did, that we're just so proud, and to have Missoula be part of the story is it's just really rewarding. And what's really cool is we know that this is a partnership that is really going to work, and it is sustainable. And I'm listening to Eric, and I'm thinking about what an incredible partner we have, not just in Eric the person and Eric the professional, but in Delta Airlines. And for him to be able to see the efforts that are going on in Missoula with his own eyes, and hear and see people, the real people that are making it happen, he takes that with him, and he sits in his meetings, and he talks with his peer group, and he talks with those above him, and he says, no, really, Missoula and Montana, big things are happening. So the more we can talk to Eric and his team, and the more we can get him here, it's not hard to get him here. He loves it here. And he's very willing to meet with us and travel all over the state. But the more we get him here, the more he gets to tell our story. So we'll keep working on that. So just a few things. One is I want to introduce Director Mike Tooley, who's here. He and I have a really fun packed day today, starting here, and then we're going to Billings to talk to the airport executives or airport directors. And I'm wondering why you two aren't there. You're going to miss a really great presentation by Director Tooley and I. We'll give you notes. And we also have Jerry Duran here, who is the person that has the laser sharp focus on the tourism and the visitation messaging for the state of Montana. And one of the first things that happened when Governor Bullock appointed this cabinet was Mike and I looked at each other with the help of Jerry, who said we need to change the Welcome to Montana highway signs. And we thought, wow, that sounds like it could be kind of fun, not this bureaucracy and this government thing. Let's do something really cool that has some beautiful Montana images and really affects how we portray ourselves to ourselves and to people driving into the state. So after about 30 seconds, we said, let's do it. And in less than a year, we announced that the program will be replacing the signs from the 1980s as you drive in at the 34 entrances into the state of Montana with the new signs that are mirror images of our tourism campaign, our visitation campaign. So we feel like that's going to do a lot of things. One being portraying us really well, two being very welcoming, and three, branding us as not just a place to come and visit, but a place to maybe think about changing things up and maybe even moving here with your business. So with that, let me just give you a quick update on Commerce, the Department of Commerce, and tell you how much I appreciate working with James and his crew, with Marcy and his crew, and all the other people that are part of the economic development story here in Missoula. And it sure is fun, not just talking around the state about the stories, but going across the nation and being able to highlight some of the things that you're doing here. And so thank you for making the government look good. You can see that the Big Sky Trust Fund is alive and well in Missoula, and keep it coming, because we love reading your applications. And we know that when it goes into this community, this county, this area, we know that it's going to be put to really good use. And it feels good to be able to say, taxpayer dollars, coal severance tax, whatever it is, it's being put to really good use. So thank you for that. The other things that are going on in the Business Resource Division that has to do with economic development is, as you can imagine, we're thinking a lot about a trip to Asia. So the international trade team is really focused on what does this mean, having Ambassador Bacchus over in China right now. What does it mean for us? What does it mean for him? What can we be doing? What should we be doing? So be on the lookout and keep your ears open for things that we'll be doing to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. And your feedback is very welcome, because we are stronger with the input from our communities. The other thing that is going on in Business Resource is our Made in Montana program, and that's that program that sits out here and drives all the exposure to the products that our Montana people make. And we want to, Jerry has a real focus on trying to monetize that program. So you're going to be seeing some things about how that's going to be an online opportunity for exposure for our Montana-made products. And also, we're moving the trade show to Helena for the first time. And we're going to blow that program up and see if we can really turn that into an annual event where we're doing workshops and education and how to connect our Montana-made products, not just with consumers, but wholesalers, and seeing what we can do about that, because we know that tells the Montana story also. So that rolls me right into the Office of Tourism's efforts. And when you hear Eric talk about the leisure and the business mix, we feel that very, very sharply in tourism. We know that if we can fill the planes on the weekends, that you will help fill the planes on the business travel days. And we know that that mix is the sustainable mix. And since I've been working with Eric, he's taught me a lot about this whole, we got to get cheap airfare into Montana, or what we need is sustainable air programs into Montana. And that's where that business leisure mix is where we come in with this sustainable piece. And so on our economic development side, we're thinking about that retention and growth and how these businesses can be better connected. And then on the tourism side, the visitation side, we're saying that's how we balance out those planes. So with tourism, we haven't seen the final numbers yet. I think we're a couple weeks out from those, but the 2013 year shows a 2% increase in visitation and a 15% increase in spend. And we all hear this a lot from the governor on down, that I don't know if I want to bring more than 10 million visitors here to this place. That's going to wreck things. Well, what we're saying is we want visitation, and we want the right kind of visitation, right? And so what we're seeing is a little bit of growth on the visitation side, but a lot more spend. And that's the kind of equation in the business model that we're really after. So any other ideas you have on that, please let us know. We welcome them. And the part of the 15% increase has to do with retail. So our visitors are coming in and they're spending more money on our products, which circles back to that Made in Montana effort we're talking about. Also, in tourism, international visitation is very important, and you'll hear the mirror of what Eric was talking about with his service, connecting the U.S. to other overseas opportunities, and so then you hear him say our links to Asia and how easy it's going to be to get to Montana from Asia. We're going to couple that with all the efforts that we're doing with Ambassador Bacchus. So we're really optimistic about our international visitation numbers and the kind of strategic and focus that we're going to be doing there in the coming years. So look forward to more of the right kind of visitors, not just coming from domestic markets, but from international markets as well. The last thing I want to mention is give you a brief update on the Governor's Main Street Montana project. So most of you were at the roundtable that we held back in May of 2013, and many of you have been in different conversations with several of us on your individual needs and priorities. But if you recall, what we're doing with this Main Street Montana program is we're trying to write a private sector bottoms-up plan for the state of Montana. It's not being led by the governor. It's not being led by me or Commissioner Busey or John Rogers from the governor's GOED office. It's being led by Larry Simpkins of Washington Companies and Bill Johnstone of D.A. Davidson, two private sector guys that are really focused on outcomes, on accomplishing some very real and meaningful goals that we've identified. So it's been a really long process. I've been in the trench quite a bit with this thing. We have over 3,000 interactions between Montanans from Eureka to Wolf Point to Missoula to Broadus. Every county has weighed in and given us their feedback. We we have that information compiled. We're writing the report, and now we are about 3 weeks away from getting the report out to the market, where you're going to be able to read it and hear what we've done and what we recommend to do. The big thing that we are really focused on now is that we narrowed it down to 126 outcomes. If we can accomplish 126 outcomes in the next 4 years, then we think we're going to be really good. But we know that that's too much, and we do not want to overpromise and underdeliver. So we're really focusing on that's not reasonable. Let's figure out what really is. And so in 3 weeks, you'll see that report. We're going to have a press event that will give you even more details. So the first year will be, you'll have a chance to say, you said you were going to do this. Did you do this? So what we love about this project is that you are going to be able to hold us accountable, and the private sector has a really big part of the success and outcome of this project. So on behalf of the governor, thank you very much for your time today, and let me and Eric know what we can do next. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Okay, we got note cards or questions coming in. So the first question, Eric, is for you. As you might make sense for Missoula in the coming years.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think really the focus for me as it pertains to Missoula is continuing to flesh out, what we've started. So continuing to add on Atlanta, to continue to add on to LA. We have a great partner in Alaska Airlines, and so that enables then the kind of connect point, from Missoula to Seattle onto that international service that we were talking about earlier. If I was to kind of lay out what some of the next opportunities might be, we have a big presence in New York, and so New York, I think, always has to be on the list for consideration. But I think Seattle too has to be on the list too. So we have a meeting later today to talk about what that could look like. I don't know exactly when that happens, in terms of when you're thinking about the progression across seasons or years, but in my mind, those would be the things that are opportunities for Missoula.
So the next one, this one's mine. So I have the three most important titles in my life are husband, father, silver elite. So you're changing the frequent flyer program. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah, that's very top. There's lots of topical items to hit while we're here. So yeah, earlier this week, yesterday morning actually, we did announce a change to the Skymiles frequent flyer program, tying it to revenue and the price of the ticket instead of distance flown. So the reasons for that are, make sense, and I'll just kind of go through those from a business perspective, okay? So these frequent flyer programs have been around since the 1980s. If you go back to what the fare environment was back in the 1980s, fares actually followed pretty closely with distance flown. That doesn't happen anymore. Now you've got a lot of business travelers who may fly short hauls. You've got a lot of leisure travelers who fly long distances. The fares on some of the long distances get low. And the people who fly on us a lot for business who pay higher fares, then in terms of like accruing and accumulating the miles, get less. So really it's just kind of like rebalancing that equation. We're not the first to do it. Hotels have done this for a long time. Southwest has a similar reward program in place in terms of how miles are accrued. So it's an adjustment by us. Part of that though, and this is part of just kind of like the overall, at Delta, we always want to be innovating and thinking about, if you break down, like any business leader always says, okay, I want to know what's working, what's not, and what's next. We think about what's next a lot. And obviously then service to Montana has always been for a while now in this what's next category. Frequent flyer program has to be there too. The way we think about the refinery and the refinery we purchased on the East Coast is part of that what's next. It's really about continuing to change the business model over time and making sure that we don't break the relationship with the customer, with the communities that we serve, but continuing to like evolve. So it's part of this innovation that Delta is always pursuing. But part of that then too, we have to invest back in how frequent flyers redeem their awards. And so what wasn't in the announcement on Wednesday was what that redemption chart would look like. It's coming, it's still being worked on, but we recognize that there has to be more opportunities for frequent flyers. If we're going to change the way you accumulate miles, then we also have to change the way you redeem them. And so one of the announcements that did come out on Wednesday was changing to one-way awards and allowing that. So not having to do round trip. But then also thinking about, maybe there's different mileage breaks instead of just the 3 tiers for how you redeem within the Delta program. So that has to be part of the discussion as well, and it is.
So this next question is actually a little bit of a drill down on a piece that you just touched on,
Okay.
which was one of the questions is that we have an individual in the audience that's going from Salt Lake to Seattle, then on to Amsterdam.
Okay.
And the price of that ticket is less than the price of flying from Missoula to Salt Lake.
Okay.
And so the rationale, they're kind of wanting to understand the rationale around the pricing structure.
Yeah. So this is a topic that comes up a lot, and it. The way we think about it is, and I don't know exactly what kind of fares are being compared here. If they're both business type fares, so it's being purchased, inside of let's say 14 days on the advanced purchase requirement, or if the stay requirement is, over a Saturday night, or maybe it's a 2-night stay. When you talk with us in pricing about how we think about the world, what we're doing when we're putting these different prices out in the marketplace is we're getting very granular about the types of passengers who fly on our aircraft. We know that leisure travelers book further out. We know that leisure travelers have other options, and so they'll buy fares like, let's say, outside of 21 days, stay over a Saturday night. Business travelers don't like to stay over Saturday nights. They buy closer in. When you start talking about then the service that we provide for business travelers, it does turn into a discussion about convenience, value of time, and what the other options are. Importantly for Montana when you talk about what the other options are, and we hear this a lot from all Montana communities, and it's a valid point, is, you know, how do Missoula fares compare to Helena? How do Helena fares compare to Bozeman? How do Bozeman fares compare to Billings? One thing that our pricing team has learned through me is that we Montanans drive. You know, we are a driving culture. We will drive for, you know, maybe a $10 or $15 difference in fare. You know, I don't think there was a lot of realization about that. I'm like, hey, you don't get it. You know, these people are gonna move on you, you know, and we can see it happening. We know we have to keep them close. When you talk about a local fare, though, from Missoula to Salt Lake City, you know, that really then is how we're thinking about it. And we don't think about it any differently from Missoula to Salt Lake City than we do Atlanta to LaGuardia. In terms of, for a business traveler, it's about the value of time, it's about convenience, it's about flexibility, it's about options.
So the new frequent flyer program will reward those people that rewards that, that's correct.
It makes sense, because then when you start talking about business travelers, and then the way we think about leisure, flying maybe long haul versus business if they're flying short, you know, this is a segment of passengers that the historical model of frequent flyer programs, it hasn't ignored them, but it's undervalued it.
Very good. So this is a two-part question. Is Delta replacing the regional jets in Montana? And secondly, how much influence does SkyWest have on rates?
Okay, good question. So the overall kind of direction we're going strategically at Delta, and you can see it when you look at, like, if you look, I know you don't pull these numbers up the way I do, but I look at overall kind of like growth rates of what's happening with seats for Delta in the domestic entity compared to what other carriers are doing. We are upgauging the fleet. That is a stated strategy. It has been occurring for the past few months. It will continue over the next years. So basically what you all as customers have told us is that you do not like 50-seat regional jets. We have heard you. If you go back a few years, you used to tell us you did not like turboprops. We heard you then too. So the regional jet was a nice evolution then out of turboprop into then it's a jet product. It serves markets, you know, like Montana well, especially if you're going short haul or shorter haul to like Salt Lake City. They don't work well when you try to fly them further, especially when fuel prices are up over $3. So there's a customer component that's very real. You have told us about that. We've listened. We hear you. There's also the economic component of when you talk about regional jets flying short haul with 50 seats with high fuel, economically, they are very difficult to make work. So upgauging the fleet then provides then a customer benefit. It gets customers on mainline aircraft or larger regional jets that have a front cabin, you know, like the 76-seaters. We're taking 717s, so that's a Boeing product. You all probably haven't seen them in Montana. The 717 is basically the new generation of the DC-9, okay? AirTran flew those a lot. AirTran's a carrier and mainly serves the eastern part of the US. They fly to Denver. But they flew a lot of 717s. With their merger with Southwest, they decided to get rid of those. We took them. So we're upgauging the fleet, coming off of 50-seaters, going to larger regional jets, but then also 717s and 737-900s, which we've started taking delivery of. It's just part of this overall upgauging of the fleet. As it pertains to Montana, it's not that you won't see regional jets, you still will see regional jets. But it's going to be this continued blend and moving 50-seaters out. It takes us a little time to transition through it, but that's the direction we're going. You know, that Embraer as a regional jet product is a very nice product. The CRJ 900, which has the front cabin as well, is a nice product. And just economically, it makes better sense for communities like Missoula to have those types of aircraft.
Here's a simple one.
Okay.
When is the cheapest day to fly?
Oh, I didn't get to the other question. What impact does SkyWest
Yes, sorry
have
about
on
that.
our rates? None. We price all of those flights. The only place where SkyWest does price it is in Butte to Salt Lake City, just on that segment, because that is part of the essential air service. You know, SkyWest assumed that route. But if you're going from Butte beyond Salt Lake City to Phoenix or Las Vegas, Kansas City, we price that. So they don't have any we don't have any conversations with them about Missoula pricing. So next question was?
The cheapest days to fly.
Cheapest day to fly. The cheapest day to fly typically would be on your Tuesdays or Wednesdays. It used to be Saturdays were kind of a cheap day to fly, you know, because demand was kind of down on Saturdays as well. Saturdays, interestingly, over the last, call it like 6, maybe 7 years, have really picked up in terms of this big leisure outbound. Instead of Friday being a big leisure outbound day, many people now move to Saturday mornings. So Saturdays have become a big day for us as well. We've tailored our schedule to kind of account for that. If you looked back at schedules 6 or 7 years ago, you would see that the Delta schedule for how we served, you know, cities would be the exact same on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday. It was like written in stone, you know, can't change it. Now we have a much more dynamic schedule. Mondays do look different than Thursdays. Tuesdays look different than Saturdays. So it's really tailoring what you all have told us as consumers, when you want to fly and where you want to go, and then adjusting the schedule for that. The cheapest day to buy a ticket, so if that, I don't know if that's a question.
That would help.
But that's one that comes up too. So there's always been these kind of like, oh, I heard that it's Wednesday morning at 3:30 because all of their systems are then updating, and you can sneak one past them and you can get the cheap fare. Our systems don't sleep, is one. But the other one is that Tuesdays at about 10 o'clock in the morning, between 10 o'clock and noon, typically it would be your cheapest, in your time zone, the time to look for the cheapest fares. The reason for that is that a lot of carriers launch fare sales on Monday nights. So our pricing analysts get into work on Tuesday mornings. They see what other carriers have done. We make a decision on should we match or are we going to match? How are we going to respond? And then we file those fares at 10 o'clock Atlanta time. So they get into the market by about noon Atlanta time.
Well, if that's not a golden nugget, I don't know what is.
It's kind of funny, like ABC News actually had someone on a few months ago, and they actually got it right. It was the first time I'd heard, you know, that they got it right. So that's not a huge secret.
Very good. So this
But
may
happy to
be a
share.
question for either you, Eric, or maybe you, Meg. Is there a possibility the state can establish a revenue guarantee program for improving air service statewide?
Do you want me to take?
I'd love to hear you first.
Revenue guarantees are an important part of, I think, air service development. So the way a revenue guarantee works is that, you know, basically there's a conversation that's held between the community and the carrier about, you know, what would it take to start service there if a carrier hasn't had that before. So then, you know, the discussion between then the carrier and the community is about, well, the carrier would say, well, we would need this amount, you know, in order to kind of alleviate the risk of the startup of that route. And so then it's over a certain time period is the way they typically are structured, you know, and you get then the service kind of up and running. Delta does use revenue guarantees. We've had them before. We had one in place when we started Bozeman. Very proudly, we didn't touch a dime of it. Right out of the box, it exceeded our expectations. We had the expectations it was always going to work. So Delta does have those relationships with communities, but I think importantly, the way we think about them, for me personally, and just kind of like from a business perspective, I'm not a big fan of them. And the reason for that is when it's all about the sustainability of service. Because we've seen in some communities, and it's not necessarily in Montana or the West, but we've seen it with some communities in Florida, that when the money ran out from the guarantee, the carrier was gone. And I think that that's bad for the community, it's bad for customers. So the real focus for us, it's not that we won't do revenue guarantees or that we don't do them, but there has to be something telling us that this is going to work over the long term.
So I think
That's my kind of view on them.
Yeah, and to add on to that, one of the first things that came across my desk when I moved to Helena a year ago was, okay, what is the state going to do? And so we set out, and the governor said, well, find out what other states are doing. So we did that. And there aren't any other programs out there. There's one in Kentucky and maybe one in Alabama. And so the rest of the states aren't engaging in this kind of activity. So that's a little bit of a telltale. The other thing is government has to be fair and equal. What if we give you all kinds of money and then Sydney wants to know why they're not getting any? So equality is something that's weighed heavily in a program like this. What is working already with state funds, the bed tax dollars, and this community is a perfect example of doing things right, is leveraging the Convention and Visitors Bureau funding and leveraging the TBID funding. So those are ways that communities can come together and say, we've got this pool of money, it's a tax collection or a service fee fund, and then taking that and engaging your private partnerships in it. Bozeman was, when I was at Big Sky, we had the money at the resort. It was Yellowstone Club, Moonlight, and Big Sky Resort, and we had this money, and Bozeman wasn't really, had an appetite to participate because it was service that was Saturdays only during the ski season, so for God's sakes, that doesn't benefit Bozeman, so you guys pay for it. Well, when things started really working, and we really started to understand that one day begets 2 days, begets summer service, begets another market. These are the conversations that you get to have by starting 1 day a week. And then you get to say, look, Bozeman or your private community, we'll match. So you come in with $1, we'll come in with $1. And so this community is doing it well. I think you know your partners up in the Flathead have started their own air coalition, and they've got a private-public fund going. They're up to almost $250,000. So those are the kinds of programs that are working. It's the community that's really driving the decision.
Great, thank you. So the next two questions, I think, are actually for James. So Eric, you're off the hot seat.
All right.
And we certainly really appreciate you coming out. It means the relationship that we have with Delta has been fantastic, and look forward to many more years of great service.
Well, thank you for that, and thanks. For me, just as I'll always consider Montana home. It's very gratifying to see, what's happening here. So thanks for all that you've done. Again, thanks for the questions. Thanks for your loyalty to Delta. We really are committed to Missoula. We're committed to serving this community over the long term. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks again, Eric. Appreciate it. Well done. Okay, so the next one is for James. We got a couple for James here. First, how many jobs have actually been created versus potential new jobs? Interested in actual versus potential about specifically between 2012 and 2013.
Can I answer on airfare? No, we do know that. So what our plan has always been, and we're going to do that this year, is at the end of year 3, was going to create our very first benchmarking report. And so that's in the process now of us gathering the data for that. We sent out a survey at the start of this year to all the businesses that we have worked with since our inception to understand what has happened with them. The reason we've said it's going to be at the end of year 3 is we have taken the same kind of strategy the state does. When they do a Big Sky Trust Fund grant, they want to know what's the job creation over 2 years. And we thought at the end of year 3 is the first time we can really give you the picture of what happened. So while that does not address what was the exact job growth from year to year, I want you to know that we take that very serious, and that has always been our plan. The board has looked at a couple models that we're going to do for benchmark report. We're having a meeting, I think, in April with our consultant to look at it, and so we're hoping by the end of the summer we'll have that job growth, the actual number. We also could just say, well, look, here's the job growth that happened in Missoula County from 2012 to 2013, but we have never said we count all jobs created. We have to have some sort of interaction with them, and so we have to understand that while there may be some companies growing, that's organic, and we don't want to take credit for that. So that's why we have to have a sophisticated tool. So I apologize if that's not the clarity you want. that's where we're trying to get to.
Very good. How is MEP supporting next weekend's Startup Missoula event?
Again, we are one of the sponsors of this event. Over nearly 100 people have signed up to participate. They get to show up on Friday night at the Elks, and you come with a business idea. They pitch them out there. They're judged. We think this is viable. People are put in teams, and over the next 48 hours, they'll go from walking in having no concept of other than an idea to hopefully on Sunday night they come out with a viable business plan. Again, this is something that we think as being a player in entrepreneurship is something we want to support. So we're a funder, and we also participate in some of the judging of that.
Very good.
And coaching.
And so we are at time. I got one more question, and if you have a tent card, it means you don't get to avoid the hot seat. So I think the next question is for Mike Tooley and maybe the mayor. When is Russell Street going to get going?
It's been 20 years in the process, and what we've focused on is the bridge, first of all. The structures across the river all are in need of replacement over the next decade or so, and so we backed up a step from looking at the entire project to mainly focusing on the bridge. And right now that's in the program to begin in 2016. So the mayor and I met just a couple weeks ago, hammered out some issues, and it's on the move. So did you want to add anything, Mayor? He doesn't want to touch it.
He doesn't want to touch it. Doesn't want to touch it.
And I knew it was dicey even coming to Missoula today, but it's a good project. It's on the move, and we're pretty excited about the compromises we've made in conjunction with the city of Missoula.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. So just a reminder, first of all, great questions and great dialogue. And again, thanks to all of you for coming over this morning, braving the weather, and participating in a great MEP update. A reminder that we do this 3 times a year, and certainly appreciate any feedback post-meeting on how we can make these more interactive, better, and certainly hope for those of you that are not investors that are considering that this was enough to tip you over the ledge so that we can actually present you as new investors at the June meeting. Thank you for coming.